this week I've got Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and I love the 2014 reboot/remake of Godzilla. And so I was really excited for this sequel. And, it's got a really impressive cast. Ken Watanabe and Sally Hawkins are back, and David Stratharin is back. And then you've got Vera Farmiga, Kyle Chandler, Millie Bobby Brown, Bradley Whitford, Thomas Middleditch, Charles Dance, O'Shea Jackson Jr., Aisha Hinds, and Zhang Ziyi joining. So, that's a pretty impressive cast. You've got some Oscar nominees in there. You've got some really big talent. So you have to go okay, well, they must have been attracted to the script because obviously they know they're not going to be Godzilla. But man, so my biggest complaint about this film is simultaneously too much plot, but the human part of the plot, and yet not enough logical plot involving the monsters. Because really, when I go to one of these movies, I just want to see monsters beating the crap out of each other. I love the first Pacific Rim where it's robots versus monsters. I love, any of it. I actually didn't love King Kong Skull Island, and I should note that this is in the same universe as Godzilla now, and they hint at that, and that's not a spoiler. That's something they've announced, but I now have a lot of questions about how that's going to work after having seen Godzilla, King of the Monsters. So the monster battles, very cool. Almost too much of them, probably, which is a weird complaint to have. But basically, I'll rewind in a second. The idea is that Kyle Chandler and Vera Farmiga are both scientists, I believe, or some sort of, they're some sort of experts in fields that, of course, would require them to be in this movie. Vera Farmiga is definitely a scientist. And they are Millie Bobby Brown's parents, and unfortunately, they lose their son in the first Godzilla attack in 2014. And so it's kind of the story of they split up and they both work for Monarch, which is the secret spooky organization that's been tracking the kaiju, they don't call them kaiju, whatever they call them, the Muto and the monsters and the creatures and et cetera, et cetera. And so the idea is now these monsters are all awakening and the government wants to kill them, and Ken Watanabe and Sally Hawkins and Thomas Middleditch is a member of Monarch, all want to save them or at least study them. And then Charles Dance is the bad guy and he wants to harvest their DNA. Again, this is all sounding absurd. And I think about 15 minutes in, I take a lot of notes during movies, and at 15 minutes in, I was like, why am I taking notes? This is Godzilla. I'm here for the monsters. You're here for the monsters. And if you're not here for the monsters, don't see Godzilla. This is not Shakespeare. This is not whatever. You are here to see monsters kick the crap out of each other. So the way it differs from the 2014 one is 2014 one spent a lot of time kind of hiding Godzilla, or he was the reveal, and it was more about the human and the getting to revealing a monster. This time around, it's nope, we know monsters are here, and we're gonna give them to you right away, which I think is a tact that could have absolutely worked. I don't know if it worked as well as they intended it to in this movie. Again, I say these, and it's a criticism, but it's not the angriest of criticisms, because you know what you're signing up for when you go to Godzilla, King of the Monsters. You should know. So I think I got distracted by there's a lot of the family drama between Vera Farmiga and Kyle Chandler and Millie Bobby Brown. The rest of the human cast does a fine job. Ken Watanabe is just one of my favorite actors, and all credit to him for being able to say all of this stuff with a straight face, to be able to say all the Pikachu, Detective Pikachu stuff, which he was also just in with a straight face. Man, what a champ. Bradley Whitford in this is the most absurd character I think I've seen on screen in a long time. And I was reading somewhere that he based his performance off Rick from Rick and Morty, which is okay, you're basing it off a cartoon character. That's the baseline we're starting with. Not a great starting point. Everyone does an admirable job. They take it seriously. They put in the best effort they can. I don't think the script does them any favors. So let's talk about the monsters. So this time around, we've got Godzilla, who's back, King of the Monsters, and he is being challenged by, of course, King Ghidorah. And if you are not familiar with the Godzilla franchise rubber monster suit version, it's the three-headed monster dragon-y looking dude, and it's cool. They do a cool job. It is kind of weird because my understanding is they did some mocap for this stuff, and I'm how, why, what's the point? Because it's just going to get written over by animators. But there are more expressions on the monsters this time around. You get much closer up to their faces, which also the scale of which makes no sense to me a lot of the time, where I'm there'll be there are a lot of scenes where they're staring down Godzilla in some sort of predator prey alpha standoff, and I'm talking about the humans. The humans are staring down Godzilla to make sure he doesn't murder them, and he can see them from he's not that close to them because he's a big monster. But he seems to the implication that he locks eyes or knows what they are or isn't going to eat them right away. It's just kind of absurd to me. I guess he's not going to eat them because he's a protector, but whatever. Either way, That's absurd. The idea of, I feel like they change scale constantly, but I digress. It's King Ghidorah who is challenging Godzilla as the kind of king of the monsters and disrupting the balance of the natural order. And you've got a couple other giant monsters involved as well who've woken up. We're going to see Mothra. We're going to see Rodan. Again, not spoilers. They've been really showing these a lot. So if those are exciting things to you and you understood what I just said, cool. I think you're really going to enjoy parts of this movie. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, but you're still okay with monsters beating the crap out of each other, cool. I still think you're going to enjoy this movie to a degree, as long as you go in with reasonable expectations. If everything I just said to you was Greek, don't go see this movie. Definitely don't go see this movie. There's no point, because it also just dives right in. There's like a little bit of setup, but it's mostly just like, all right, we're getting to it. Overall, I still had fun. I still get giddy when I see Godzilla on screen and about to bite the neck of King Ghidorah or throw up blue fire at him and all this sort of stuff. So I still had a good time. I had, I set my expectations pretty low and therefore they were met. And so I'm suggesting that you do the same. I'm going to give it 3 out of 5. I think that's being a little generous, but it's a 3 out of 5 if you know what you're going in for, right? Like if you know, okay, this is a Godzilla movie at the end of the day. This isn't going to be like a deep Oscar-winning film. This isn't even going to be like Pacific Rim quality in terms of story and stuff like that. This is just kind of the humans are doing their thing and you're here for the monsters. So 3 out of 5. The other film I have this week is Rocketman, which is another musical biopic-esque film, which I know we just had one, and I know it's very easy to compare them, but I think the most important comparison that a lot of people are forgetting is, so the director of Rocketman is Dexter Fletcher, and he was the one who was brought in to help out on Bohemian Rhapsody. So I'm like, why are we, okay, all right, that's, forget that they're both musical biopics, they share a director for some of it. Anyway, it stars Taron Egerton as Elton John, and then Jamie Bell, Richard Madden from Game of Thrones, Gemma Jones, Bryce Dallas Howard are all in it, and it's the kind of it's a musical. I should start off with that. It is a musical. Like Bohemian Rhapsody is a biopic. This is a musical. And so if you don't like musicals, you're not going to like this. And if you don't like Elton John music, you're definitely not going to like this. But who doesn't like Elton John music? I mean, come on. And the thing that you worry about with a biopic about someone who is still alive and is also involved to a degree at least, or has given their blessing to a film, is that it's not going to be, it's going to sugarcoat things. Which, again, I want to stop comparing this to Bohemian Rhapsody, but it's hard not to. Bohemian Rhapsody feels like it... Actually, Bohemian Rhapsody didn't feel like it sugarcoated things. Bohemian Rhapsody felt like it swept a lot of things under the rug. Like the fact that Freddie Mercury's sexuality was a dirty secret for the first however long, that was tough for me. Or they made it seem like it was a bad thing. Anyway, so I thought Taron did such a great job in this. He does his own singing, which again, not something you'll see in certain other ones. So it's not Elton John you're going to hear. And it's fine. He does a very good job, but just be prepared that this isn't going to sound exactly like Elton John. The arrangements in certain songs are a little bit different. It's its own take, which is, I think, a very good thing. I wouldn't want to see just okay, and we're breaking into the exact same composition that we've known, because what's the point? Then you're just going to go to an Elton John concert if you can afford to, which probably a lot of us can't anymore. And because it is musical, expect big set pieces, expect big numbers, which is not something I was expecting going into it. So it was really fun to be like, oh, okay, this is where we're going with this. This is the performance we're going to take. And so it's fantastical in a lot of senses. There's a reality breaking. I don't think the trailers necessarily convey that, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's actually an interesting take. But if you are not a fan of that, or you were going in expecting a pure biopic, you might be taken aback. So just a little bit of warning. This is a fun musical. The only thing that for me, I was like, there feels like a slight imbalance of the good to the bad. When it gets dark, it gets dark. But aside from that, great music. It's been stuck in my head for weeks. So, be prepared for that part of it. It's definitely it is a non-linear story. It is a musical, and it's from a subjective point of storytelling view. It's also, of course, from a subjective point of view because Elton John is still alive, and I'm sure would not have blessed a film that, mangled, but also mangled any part of his reputation. He didn't let them off the hook. He didn't force them to let him off the hook, I guess is a better way to say that, because it still shows a lot of his mistakes. But I think there's a certain extra level of care that you would take, considering that he is, again, still alive and able to see this film. So Rocketman, really enjoyed it. Definitely worth seeing. Great performances. I'm going to give it 4.3 out of 5.